The unearthly grave. The desert of the alien world was silent. Red sand stretched as far as the eye could see, broken only by black rocks that looked like the bones of giants. A lone human explorer walked across this strange land. His name was Captain Elias Kane. His suit hummed softly, filtering the thin air as he scanned the horizon for signs of life. But what he found that day was not life. It was death. Half buried under the sand stood a stone marker, weathered and ancient. Unlike the sharp rocks around it, this stone had been carved by hands. Strange symbols covered its surface, but one line was scratched in human letters. Elias bent closer, brushing away the dust. The words were clear. "Bury me here." A chill ran through him. Who would write such words on their own grave? And why in human script, on a planet where humans had never lived? Elias knelt beside the stone. He dug away the sand, uncovering the rest of the marker. More symbols appeared, alien in design, twisted and sharp. They looked like warnings, like curses, but beneath them, in shaky writing, another human phrase was etched: "I am not breeding material." Elias froze. His heartbeat quickened. This was no ordinary grave. Someone had fought to leave these words behind. Someone had wanted their story remembered. The wind howled across the desert, carrying whispers that seemed to rise from the ground itself. Elias looked around, suddenly aware of how alone he was. Still, curiosity pulled him deeper. He pressed his hand against the stone, and with a low grinding sound, a hidden panel opened. Inside was a small crystal recorder. Its surface flickered, weakly, as if waiting for someone to hear its message. Elias hesitated, then activated it. A voice filled the air. It was a woman's voice, strong yet heavy with pain. "If you are hearing this, know that I begged them. I begged them not to use me. I was a warrior, not breeding stock. But they did not listen. They never listen." The voice cracked, then grew fierce again. "I asked for death, but they gave me worse. They gave me silence. They gave me a tomb." Elias felt the hairs on his neck rise. He could almost see her, a proud alien woman standing before her rulers, shouting these words with fire in her eyes. Who was she? Why was her grave marked with human letters? The recording sputtered, then ended. The desert was silent again, but Elias no longer felt alone. The air seemed heavier, charged with unseen eyes. He stood, scanning the horizon. The rocks cast long shadows in the dying light of the alien sun. For a moment, Elias thought he saw movement, something tall and thin watching from the ridge. But when he blinked, the shadow was gone. He turned back to the grave. The words burned in his mind. "I am not breeding material." It was not just a grave. It was a protest, a cry of defiance buried in the sand. Elias felt the weight of destiny pressing on him. He could leave now, return to his ship, and pretend he had seen nothing. But something inside him whispered that this was only the beginning. The woman's voice echoed in his helmet, soft and haunting. "I begged, until a human made me pregnant." Elias staggered back, his eyes wide. The desert wind rose again, carrying her words into the endless night. And in that moment, Elias knew. This grave was not finished. This was the start of a story, buried for centuries, waiting for him to uncover it. The alien plea captain, Elias Kane, sat inside his small camp, the desert wind scratching against the walls of his shelter. The crystal recorder lay on the table in front of him, glowing faintly as if alive. He had listened to the message once, but he could not shake the sound of her voice. It was not just words, it was pain, rage, and something else. A story that demanded to be heard. He activated the recorder again. The voice returned, soft at first, then strong. "They called me chosen, but I was not chosen. I was taken. They said my bloodline was perfect for breeding, that my womb would bring strong children for the war, I told them again and again, I am not breeding material. I am a soldier. I am a fighter. I would rather die with honor than live in a cage. Elias leaned closer, heart pounding. He could hear the tremor in her words, but also the steel behind them. She was no weak captive. She was a warrior who had been stripped of everything. The voice continued. My name. It does not matter. They erased it from their records. They wanted me to be only a vessel, a machine to carry life, not a person. They kept me in darkness, with others like me. Some accepted their fate. Some gave up. I did not. I fought. I screamed. I begged them to let me stand on the battlefield. But they only laughed. To them, my strength was in my body, not in my spirit. The recorder crackled, and Elias felt his throat tighten. He imagined her inside a cold prison surrounded by walls of iron and guards who never saw her as more than flesh. The woman's voice grew louder, angrier. I begged them for death, a clean death, a warrior's death. I told them, bury me here on this red land. Do not chain me, do not break me. But they refused. They wanted children, not warriors. They wanted obedience, not freedom. Elias could almost see it. The council of alien leaders, cold and unmoving, as this proud woman stood before them. Her eyes must have burned with fury. Her hands must have shaken with rage. And yet they ignored her. Then her voice changed. Softer. Quieter. In that darkness I found a light. Not one of my own kind, but a human. Elias sat up straighter. His breath caught in his chest. He was a soldier, like me. His ship had crashed during the war. They captured him, threw him into the cages with us, thinking he was broken, but he was not. He looked at me, not as breeding stock, not as property, but as someone alive. His name, I will not speak. If they hear it, they will try to erase him too. But he gave me something no one else had given me. He gave me respect. Her voice cracked. For the first time, Elias heard not just anger but sorrow. He listened to me. He asked me who I was. Not what I could produce, not what I was worth, but who I was. And for the first time in years, I remembered my own name. The recorder fell silent for a moment. Elias realized his hands were trembling. Then the voice returned, low and fierce. We were not supposed to be together. To my people, he was an enemy. To his people, I was a monster. But in that cage, none of that mattered. We shared our stories. We shared our pain. And slowly, we shared our hearts. The air in Elias's camp seemed to grow colder. The desert outside howled louder as if carrying her words through time. They discovered us. They called it shameful. They said I had betrayed my blood, my people, my duty. They executed him. I still hear his screams. They told me I was cursed, but it was too late. The seed had already been planted. His seed. A child growing inside me. Not alien, not human. Something more. Elias closed his eyes. His chest tightened with both sorrow and awe. I begged them to let me keep the child. I told them this child could change everything, but they only saw impurity. They buried me alive. They thought they had ended me, but they were wrong. The recording flickered. The voice grew faint, as if fading with the memory of her last breaths. If you hear this, human, know that my plea was not for mercy, it was for justice. Do not let them erase us. Do not let them erase him. My blood, his blood, our child, it still walks this universe. Find it. Protect it. Because in that child lies the future of more than one race. The crystal dimmed. The message ended. Elias sat in silence. His heart raced as he looked at the grave marker outside, the words carved in both alien symbols and human letters, bury me here, I am not breeding material. But she was more than that. She was a voice reaching across centuries, demanding to be heard. Elias knew then that his mission had changed. He had not come to this world for treasure or knowledge. He had come to uncover a buried truth, a truth that could unite or shatter entire civilizations, and in the shadows beyond his camp something moved, watching, waiting, human defiance. The alien desert slept under a cold moon. Captain Elias Kane stood outside his camp, staring at the grave marker. The words still burned in his mind. I am not breeding material. The voice from the recorder echoed in his ears, fierce and broken, like a ghost refusing to rest. Elias should have left. Any normal explorer would have taken the discovery, sent it back to command, and flown away. But something inside him, something stubborn, something deeply human, refused to turn his back. That night, he felt eyes on him. He turned sharply, his rifle ready. On the ridge above the grave stood 3 figures, tall, armored, their bodies glowing faintly under the alien moon. Their faces were hidden behind masks carved with cruel lines. Aliens. The same species as the woman in the recording. The leader raised a hand, and his voice boomed across the desert. Leave this place, human. That grave is not yours to touch. She was a traitor. Her name does not deserve to be spoken. Elias clenched his jaw. His hand tightened on his rifle, but he did not fire. I heard her voice. He called back. She was no traitor. She was a prisoner. She was more than what you made her. The aliens hissed, their armor clicking as they stepped closer. The leader's voice cut through the night. Do not speak of her. She brought shame. She defiled our blood. That grave is cursed. Walk away now or join her beneath the sand. Elias stood his ground. The desert wind whipped around him, carrying grains of red dust across his visor. He lowered his rifle slowly, not in surrender, but in defiance. She begged you for freedom, Elias said, voice steady. She begged to fight, to live with honor. You silenced her. You buried her. And now you call her cursed? No. You are cursed. For fearing the truth. For a long moment the aliens did not move. Then one of them, the smallest of the 3, shifted uneasily. His mask tilted slightly, as if his eyes were on the grave, not Elias. The leader barked at him in their tongue, sharp and angry. The smaller alien froze, fists clenched. Elias saw it. Doubt. A crack in their armor of lies. The leader turned back to Elias. You do not understand our ways, human. She was chosen. She refused her duty. Her words are poison. If you stay, her poison will take root in you too. Elias stepped closer, his shadow stretching long under the moonlight. His voice grew louder, stronger. Then let it take root, because I would rather die with her truth than live with your lies. The desert fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. The 3 aliens stood rigid, their glowing armor flickering in the moonlight. The leader hissed, a sound filled with rage. So be it. If you carry her words, you carry her fate. We will not warn you again. With that, they vanished into the night, their forms dissolving into the shadows. The ridge was empty once more, as if they had never been there. But Elias knew better. They would return, and next time they would not come with warnings. He returned to his camp, his heart pounding. He replayed the recording again, listening to the woman's voice until sleep pulled at his eyes. Her words filled his dreams, her anger, her sorrow, her plea for justice. When dawn came, Elias stood over the grave once more. He placed his hand on the stone, his voice quiet but firm. You are not forgotten, not while I live. They can silence you, but they cannot silence me. As he spoke, a faint hum rose from the ground. The crystal recorder flickered, releasing one last hidden fragment of her voice. If you defy them, human, then you are like me. And if you are like me, then beware. They will hunt you. They will bury you. But remember this. The truth is stronger than any tomb. Elias's breath caught. The message was not only a plea, it was a warning. She had known even in her final moments that someone like him would one day hear her. He tightened his grip on his rifle. He knew what awaited him now. The aliens would not allow this secret to escape. They would chase him across worlds if needed, but Elias was human, and humans did not bow. They fought. They defied. For the first time since landing on this cursed planet, Elias smiled. It was not a happy smile, but a grim one, the kind of smile a soldier wears before battle. He whispered to the grave, "You wanted a warrior, not a breeder. You have one now." The sun rose, painting the desert in blood-red light, and somewhere in the shadows, unseen eyes watched, waiting for their moment to strike. But Elias Kane was ready. The forbidden union. The desert burned under the rising sun, but Captain Elias Kane's mind was far away. He could still hear the alien woman's voice from the recorder, her anger, her pain, and then the quiet part where she spoke of a human soldier, a human, captured during the war. A man who had looked at her not as an object, not as a weapon, but as someone alive. Elias sat beside the grave, his fingers brushing over the carved words. "I am not breeding material." She had said it with fire, but behind that fire was a wound. And somehow in the darkness of her prison, that wound had been healed, not by her people but by one of his own. The recorder hummed again, almost as if it sensed Elias's thoughts. A new fragment of memory played, one he hadn't heard before. The woman's voice returned, softer now. "I first saw him when they dragged him into the cages. His face was bloodied, his body broken. They thought he would not survive. But he did. He survived everything. And when he opened his eyes, he looked at me, not with fear, not with disgust, but with something I had never seen before." Elias leaned closer. He imagined her sitting in chains, watching as a battered human soldier was thrown into the same pit. Their enemies thought they were both defeated, but in that defeat, something else was born. At first, I hated him. I thought he was weak. I thought he would beg for death as so many others did, but he did not. He smiled at me, can you believe it? In the darkness, bleeding, broken, he smiled. And when I spat at him, when I told him I was not some broodmare, he only said 3 words. "I believe you." The recorder grew quiet for a moment. Elias could almost hear her breathing. No one had ever believed me before. Not my council, not my guards, not even the other prisoners. To them I was just loud, foolish, doomed. But this human, this man, looked at me and saw truth. That was the beginning. Elias's chest tightened. He could picture it. 2 enemies, thrown together in the same cage, finding strength in one another. Not through power, not through weapons, but through trust. The voice grew warmer now, as if she were remembering something secret, something precious. "We whispered when the guards were gone. He told me of his home, a blue world filled with oceans. He said the waves could sing, and the skies could burn red at dusk. I told him of my people, of our battles, of the honor we once held before. We became slaves to our own hunger for bloodlines. He laughed at my pride, and I laughed at his stubbornness. In that darkness, laughter was rarer than water. But we found it together." Elias could not stop listening. He felt like an intruder on something sacred, yet he could not turn away. One night when the guards slept, he reached for my hand. It was nothing, just touch. But in that moment, I remembered I was alive, not a prisoner, not breeding material, alive. And when he kissed me, the stars themselves seemed to tremble. The words hung heavy in the air. Elias swallowed hard, realizing the depth of what he was hearing. This was more than defiance. This was love in its purest, most forbidden form, born in chains, yet unbroken. The voice grew colder again. "They discovered us, of course. They always discover. They called me traitor, cursed me as impure. They called him filth, less than animal. They dragged him from the cage, and I screamed until my throat bled. They thought killing him would break me. But it did not, because by then it was too late. His seed was already inside me. His blood had joined mine. And no council, no army, No grave could erase that. Elias felt his stomach twist. The weight of her words was immense. She had loved a human. She had carried his child. And for that, she was buried alive. The recording crackled, then whispered one last secret. When they sealed me in the earth, I was not afraid. I carried him within me. I carried both of us. They thought they buried shame. They did not know they buried a legacy. The crystal went dark. Silence returned to the desert. Elias rose slowly, his breath heavy. He stared at the grave marker, and for the first time he understood. This was not just the story of a prisoner. It was the story of a union that should never have been possible. A union that had created something the universe had never seen. Before, half human, half alien. A child born of love and defiance. Elias clenched his fists. Somewhere out there, in the endless stars, that bloodline still lived. The woman had believed it. And now, so did he. But he also knew one thing more. Her people would never allow such a truth to survive. If they were already watching him then, they feared it still, which meant the child or the child's descendants might not just exist, they might still be in danger. Elias turned toward the horizon, his eyes burning with new purpose. The desert wind howled behind him, carrying whispers of the past, and in the shadows, unseen by human eyes, the aliens who had once buried her stirred, betrayal, and exile. The desert sun was high, burning like fire across the red horizon. Captain Elias Kane stood by the grave, the woman's words echoing inside his mind. He had heard of her love. He had heard of her child. But he had not yet heard the end. The moment when her own people turned against her completely. That evening, as the sky darkened, the crystal recorder flickered again. A new fragment began to play, her voice heavy with sorrow. They found out. They always find out. My body betrayed me, they said. It carried a child that was not pure. They called me abomination. They said I had poisoned our bloodline. My council gathered not to honor me, but to judge me. They wore masks of stone. They spoke in voices colder than death. Elias closed his eyes, imagining it. A great hall, dark and silent, filled with the leaders of her race. She stood before them, not in armor, but in chains. The voice trembled, but did not break. They asked me why. Why I had chosen filth over honor. Why I had given myself to an enemy. I told them the truth. I told them he had given me something they never did. He gave me choice. He gave me respect. He gave me freedom, even in a cage. The recorder crackled with static, then sharpened. They did not understand. They never would. They shouted words like betrayal, impurity, disgrace. They cursed me. They cursed the child in my womb. They said I was not fit to live. But death would have been mercy. And mercy is not their way. Elias felt a knot in his stomach. He leaned closer, unable to stop listening. The woman's voice grew darker now. They dragged me through the streets. My people watched. Some spat, some threw stones, but some looked away, their eyes filled with shame. They knew. Deep inside, they knew I was right. But fear bound their tongues. Elias could see it in his mind. Her proud head held high even as chains cut into her wrists. The crowd shouting, the leaders unmoved. And yet, she did not bow. They took me to the desert, to this very place. They dug a pit in the sand. I remember the sound of the shovels, the heat of the sun on my skin. They told me I would not be executed. No, they would bury me alive. They said my grave would be a warning to all who dared to defy them. They said I would beg for air, beg for mercy, beg for release. Her words fell heavy like stones. But I did not beg. I laughed. I laughed at their fear. Because if they were so powerful, why bury me? Why silence me? Why not let me die like a warrior? The answer was simple. They feared me. They feared my child. They feared the truth. The desert wind howled around Elias as if carrying her final defiance through the ages. The recording grew faint, her voice soft and hollow now. When the sand began to fall over me, I felt the weight of the world pressing down. My lungs burned. My heart slowed. But I whispered to the earth, I whispered to my child, I said, you are not shame, you are hope. One day someone will find us. One day someone will tell our story. Silence stretched. Elias realized his hands were trembling. He felt the weight of her suffering pressing on him like the sand that had crushed her. Then the voice returned one last time, sharp and fierce. And so I begged them, not for life, not for mercy, but for this grave. Bury me here. Because graves do not hide forever. Graves are only doors waiting to be opened. The recorder went dark. Elias stepped back, his chest heaving. He looked at the grave with new eyes. It was not just a tomb. It was a monument to betrayal, to cruelty, and to defiance. The aliens who had stood on the ridge were right about one thing. This place was dangerous. But not because of curses, because of truth. He whispered into the night. They buried you to silence you, but your voice is louder than ever. The desert answered with silence. But in that silence, Elias felt her presence, like a hand on his shoulder, guiding him forward. The betrayal had been complete. The exile had been merciless. But her story was not over. If her bloodline had survived, then her enemy's greatest fear was still alive, and Elias Kane would find it. The bloodline revealed. The desert winds howled through the night, but Captain Elias Kane did not sleep. He sat inside his camp, the grave, outside glowing faintly in the pale moonlight. The woman's story circled in his mind, the plea, the forbidden love, the betrayal, and the burial. But it was her last words that struck deepest. My blood, his blood, our child. It still walks this universe. Find it. Protect it. Elias knew what he had to do. If the child had lived, if descendants still walked among the stars, then her sacrifice was not in vain. And if they still lived in hiding, then someone had to bring them into the light. The next morning, Elias powered his ship and left the red desert world. But he did not leave the woman behind. Her voice followed him, echoing in every silence, urging him forward. The search begins. Elias traveled from colony to colony, digging through archives, stolen records, forgotten data. He looked for whispers, rumors of strange births, children, stronger than they should be, people who healed too quickly, who thought too sharply. Most laughed at him, dismissing his questions as madness. But in the dark corners of space where laws were weak and secrets thrived, Elias found fragments. A mining settlement on Vera 9 spoke of a woman who had survived a cave-in with no oxygen for hours. A frontier family on Delta Edge whispered of a child who could bend metal doors with his bare hands. And in an old medical file hidden deep in a military database, Elias found something chilling. Genetic markers. Half human, half alien. Someone had tried to erase the file, but not well enough. The bloodline was real. The Watchers. But Elias was not the only one searching. More than once he felt eyes on him. Ships followed him in the void. Shadows slipped through the alleys where he asked questions. The same aliens who had buried her were still watching, even after centuries. They had not forgotten. One night in a crowded port city, Elias caught one of them. A thin alien figure cornered him in an abandoned hangar. The creature's mask gleamed under the dim lights. "Stop your search, human," the alien hissed. "The child was erased. The bloodline does not exist. Leave it buried or we will bury you too." Elias leveled his weapon at the figure but did not fire. His voice was calm, cold. "You wouldn't be here if the bloodline didn't exist. You fear it. And that means it's alive." The alien snarled but said nothing. In the next instant, it slipped back into the shadows, vanishing like smoke. Elias stood alone but not afraid. Their fear was proof enough. The clue on the rim world of Hestara, Elias found his breakthrough. An old librarian, blind in one eye, handed him a forgotten journal. Its pages were cracked with age, but inside were words written in human letters. The journal spoke of a traveler who claimed his mother had always told him, "You are more than human, you are more than alien, you are something new." The traveler wrote of being hunted, of moving from world to world, hiding his strength. He never revealed his name, but he left one symbol drawn again and again, a mark Elias recognized. The same twisted pattern carved into the alien woman's grave. His heart pounded. The bloodline was not a rumor. It was real. And they had left signs, small and scattered, like breadcrumbs through history. The encounter Elias followed the clues, to the deep forests of Arkan Reach. The air was thick with mist, the trees rising like towers. For days he searched, guided by fragments, until one night, under a sky filled with twin moons, he felt it. A presence. He was not alone. From the shadows stepped a figure. Tall, cloaked, but not quite human. The face was smooth, with human features, yet the eyes glowed faintly with alien light. The voice, when it spoke, was both familiar and strange. "We've been waiting for you, Captain." Elias froze. His hand hovered over his weapon, but he did not draw it. His voice was barely a whisper. "Who are you?" The figure lowered its hood. "I am the child of two worlds. I am the blood she spoke of. And I carry her memory." Elias's breath caught. He stared at the impossible truth standing before him. The bloodline had survived, not just as rumor, not as myth, but alive, flesh and bone, standing in the mist. The revelation. The figure stepped closer, eyes burning with quiet strength. "My ancestors lived in silence, hunted and hidden, but we endured." Her voice carried through us. Her defiance lives in our blood. And now, through you, her story is told. Again. Elias felt the desert grave far behind him, yet in this moment he could almost hear her voice once more. She had begged to be remembered, and now her child's child stood before him, proof that she had never been silenced. The hybrid's gaze hardened. "But beware, human. They know you are searching. They know you found me. And they will come." The forest around them seemed to grow darker, as if the very night leaned closer. Elias squared his shoulders, his voice steady. "Then let them come, because now they'll have to face both of us." Humanity's legacy. The forest of Arkan Reach was silent, but Elias Kane felt the storm approaching. He stood face to face with the hybrid, a being not fully human, not fully alien, but something greater. The eyes that glowed faintly in the mist were both familiar and strange. They carried the memory of a buried mother and the blood of a forbidden father. Elias's voice was quiet. "So you are real." The child lived. Her sacrifice was not in vain. The hybrid gave a faint nod. "We lived in shadows. We hid through centuries, hunted by both sides. My people never forgot her voice. She was our beginning. But we knew one day someone would come, someone who could not turn away from her grave." Elias's heart tightened. He thought of the desert, the carved stone, the voice that had begged for justice. She had waited across time, and now her bloodline stood before him. But before he could speak again, the forest shivered. Branches shook. A low hum filled the air. The enemy had come. The hunters' arrived figures emerged from the mist. Armored aliens, tall and merciless. Their glowing weapons cut through the darkness, at least a dozen of them, maybe more, surrounding Elias and the hybrid. The leader's voice rang out sharp and filled with contempt. "We warned you, human. You carry her curse, and now you stand with the abomination. There will be no grave, this time. Only ashes." The hybrid stepped forward, cloak falling away to reveal a figure strong, balanced, unshaken. The glowing eyes burned brighter. "You call me abomination, but I am proof that your lies cannot kill the truth. My blood is strength. My blood is hope. And today, I will not hide." Elias lifted his rifle, standing shoulder to shoulder with the hybrid. His voice was steel. "Then neither will I." The battle, the forest exploded with fire. Blades clashed, rifles thundered. Elias moved with the precision of a soldier, striking from the shadows, every shot true. But it was the hybrid who stunned him. With movements faster than human, stronger than alien, the hybrid fought like a storm unleashed. Blows that should have crushed bones were absorbed. Weapons that should have killed were shattered and glowing. Hands, Elias saw it, human resilience mixed with alien power. The child of two worlds was not weaker, it was stronger. But the enemy came in waves, relentless. Elias's chest burned as a blast grazed him, throwing him against a tree. He coughed, blood on his lips, but forced himself back up. Beside him the hybrid roared, sending two armored enemies crashing into the dirt. The leader advanced, his blade glowing with fury. "You cannot win. We buried her. We will bury you, and this time there will be no legacy." The hybrid met his, strike, strength against strength. Sparks lit the night. Their voices thundered. "You buried her body, but not her voice, not her blood, and not me." With a final surge, the hybrid shattered the leader's blade and struck him down. The forest fell silent. The surviving aliens fled into the mist, their courage broken. The aftermath, Elias collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, blood seeping from his wounds. The hybrid knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You should rest. You've done enough." But Elias shook his head, his voice hoarse. "No, I had to see it. I had to see that she was right, that you are real." The hybrid's expression softened. She believed her story would be carried forward. "You have carried it farther than anyone, and now you are part of it too." Elias looked into the glowing eyes and felt something shift inside him. The woman had begged to be remembered, and now her memory stood alive before him. She was not breeding material. She was a warrior, and her child had become the future she had dreamed of. The legacy days later, under the twin moons of Arkan Reach, Elias stood with the hybrids. More of them emerged from the shadows, men, women, children, dozens of them, hidden for centuries, waiting for the right time. They carried both the stubbornness of humans and the strength of aliens. They were not cursed. They were not abominations. They were something new. The hybrid who had fought beside him raised a hand. "For too long we hid. For too long we let fear guide us. But no more. The galaxy will know who we are, and they will know who she was. Not a prisoner, not a breeder. A mother, a warrior, the seed of tomorrow." Elias felt tears burn his eyes as he remembered the grave in the desert. He whispered almost to himself, "You were never breeding material. You were humanity's legacy." The hybrids lifted their heads to the stars. The night air trembled with hope. And as the wind carried through the forest, Elias thought he could hear her voice once more, soft and proud. "Bury me here. But no, I will rise again."